Good morning, maybe, for some of you boys and girls. Today we are going to talk about context clues again, but we're going to talk about it in more of an academic vocabulary, meaning these are going to be using your context clues in a non-fiction text instead of a fiction text, which we've used before. So again, context clues, you're going to want to look for those key things. Maybe you have a synonym or an antonym that are coming around, that are around the word. Maybe they give an example, or maybe they give the actual definition of the word. You're going to look for those types of clues to help you figure out what the word means. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to read this passage, and then we're going to look at these unknown words, okay? So artists have been creating mosaics for many centuries. In ancient times, colored pebbles were used to create mosaics. Throughout history, most mosaics were made by putting small square tiles close together to create an image, scene, pattern, or design. The tiles were glued or placed into wet cement or plaster. Mosaics are common decorations for walls and buildings. Artists have used shells, marble, hard stone, glass, clay, and other materials to create mosaics. So again, this is most likely about mosaics. That's what it keeps talking about. And our unknown word, maybe you don't understand what a mosaic is. Well, what context clues does the author provide? So let's see. They say, they talk about they're made from small square tiles close together to create an image. So, or what should I say, scene, pattern, or design as well. They are decorations for walls and buildings. I think that would be a pretty good amount of information. So I underlined my context clues. So I'm going to put underlined instead of writing everything out. What am I reading about? We're obviously reading about mosaics. Well, so we're obviously reading about mosaics and their history, I would say. Because they kind of are talking about the history of the timeline of mosaics. And what does this word mean? Well, it means small tiles or small, because it didn't just talk about tiles. Let's see, materials, right? Used to create a image, scene, pattern, or design. So materials used to create, we're just going to say a design. But we know from reading it that it means that's an image, a pattern, or a design, something like that. The next one is plaster. Luckily it's underlined. So let's see. The tiles were glued or placed into wet cement or plaster. So into wet cement or plaster. That's about all we have to go with our context clues, right? We could say like glued or placed. So we have it underlined, right? Those are the only kind of things that when we look around the word that we don't know, that we can find. Well, what are you reading about right now? What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about plaster. And how tiles were placed. So what is plaster? It says it's how they're kind of glued or placed into wet cement or plaster. So we know that it's somewhat like cement. We know what cement is because we can use our prior knowledge to help us figure that out. And I'm going to say plaster is a substance used to keep tiles in place. So I wrote that it's a substance used to keep tiles in place because it says that they're glued, and I think that was a big keyword for me. That, well, I know when I glue something down or when I cement something down, I'm doing it to keep that object or whatever it is in place so it doesn't move around. Okay? So that's kind of how we find those context clues, how we use those context clues to figure out words that we're unsure of. So I'm going to erase this, and you can go ahead and flip to the next page. going to be reading out the bald eagle. So what I want you to do is you're going to read the first 3 paragraphs. We're going to do this part together down here where we are talking about the word refurbish and what it's comparing refurbishing an old nest to. And we want to be able to explain the meaning of refurbish and tell what clues helped us. So again, we probably won't write all this out. We'll probably discuss it and underline things, but still, we're going to be doing these 2. So listen for that word refurbish or refurbishing, okay? What I want you to do is I want you to pause, read those first 3 paragraphs, and then unpause, and we'll talk about it. Go ahead. Okay, my friends, I hope you learned something interesting about eagles in these first 3 paragraphs. I liked how it talked about how many eggs that the female lays and how they were very specific about how big the eggs were. I thought that was very interesting. But in paragraph 3, we have this word refurbish. And it's asking you what is refurbishing an old nest compared to. So it says, an eagle's pair may just refurbish an old nest with their new materials instead of building a new one. This is just like when people fix up an old house instead of building a new one. So what is refurbishing an old nest compared to? It is compared to fixing up an old house. I think that was a really good comparison too, because it kind of gives you a little bit of a picture in your head about what they're doing. Explain the meaning of refurbish and tell what clues helped you find the meaning. So refurbish an old nest with new materials instead of building a new one. I think that was the key word. So I think refurbish means to, let's say, when we refurbish something, we means to revamp an old item using new materials. And I think what helped me the most is they told me that they're using new materials instead of building a new one. But I think this example was also very, very helpful because it gave you a better understanding. Like maybe you still didn't understand what they were saying when they were saying, oh, well, they're getting new materials instead of building a new one. But they give you this example and they say, oh, it's like building it's like fixing up an old house instead of building a new one. And then you can maybe relate more to that because maybe that's something your family did or doing, or you've known of somebody who has done something like that. So I think that when they give examples, especially for words that we're unsure of, it's super helpful. I'm going to erase this and you're going to flip to the next page. Okay, again, you're going to read paragraphs 4 and 5. We're going to talk about what are loggers and what helped us figure that out. So what I want you to do is pause, read 4 and 5, and then we'll answer. Go ahead. Okay, so you should have read paragraphs 4 and 5. I thought it was interesting about the pesticides and how they were causing their eggs to have thin shells that broke easily, and that was something that kept eagles from really reproducing, and that was the reason that they were declining. Their numbers were declining so much. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't realize that. But you should have read and found the word loggers underlined, and it's asking what are loggers. So they also work with loggers and builders to protect nests. These nests could be on properties where people want to cut down trees to build homes and businesses. So, are loggers people who protect nests? I don't think so, because the people that protect nests are the wildlife biologists, scientists, and volunteers. So I'm going to go with no. Are they people who trap animals? Well, maybe. It says these are different groups also help trappers, farmers, but I don't think that goes together. People who cut down trees. It does mention cutting down trees, so maybe. Put dash next to it. And people who build homes and businesses. Oh, definitely said that. So what's a logger? They also work with loggers and builders to protect nests. These nests could be on properties where people want to cut down trees to build homes and businesses. So is a logger somebody who cuts down trees, or somebody who builds homes and businesses? And here's where you might need to use your prior knowledge. What makes the most sense? A log. What do you call a tree that has fallen down? You find it on the ground. You might call it a dead tree, but you also see a tree log, correct? So I'm going to go with letter C, just using some of my prior knowledge, some stuff that I already know, to answer my question. But also, where it says where people want to cut down trees, that's kind of one of your clues too. That trees, logs, they kind of coincide. So in case you, and we know that a builder is going to be somebody who wants to build homes and businesses. So we know that that's what a builder is, right? Now we know what a logger is, somebody who cuts down trees. So your answer is C. Now that kind of seems like a lot to figure out that answer, but I think it's the best way. Your next job is to do the next pages and upload them for your teacher to check. It should be just like maybe 3 pages that you're supposed to do, just like we've been doing for the past couple days. And then make sure that you upload each one of those pages so that we're able to check them. Good luck.